Hello, tonight. You're standing at the edge of a fjord where the world feels older than it should, like the rocks have been whispering. Secrets to the waves for longer than time itself has bothered to count. The mist hangs heavy, curling low, like it's trying to keep secrets grounded. It smells of salt, pine, resin, and the kind of clean cold that stings your nose just enough to let you know you're still alive. Barely. You're in Viking country now. And spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this journey. At least not without getting emotionally attached to someone named Bjorn. So before you relax, consider liking and subscribing, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. I make these to help you rest, not because Odin demands it, although, between us, he might. Comment your location and local time. Might love to know where in Midgard. You're drifting off from tonight. Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background noise. And let's slowly begin tonight's voyage. You press your palm against the cold stone of the shoreline, and it feels oddly warm beneath the surface, like there's something sleeping under. There's something old. Your boots crunch against gravel and seaweed, slick with the tide. Far off, a lone gull shrieks like it's trying to warn you. But honestly, gulls are always a little dramatic. The fjord stretches out like a quiet blade, cutting between cliffs wrapped in pine and fog. There's no sign of modern life, not tower, not a boat engine, not even a suspicious Wi-Fi signal named Valhallagest. Just the hush of lapping water and the distant creak of Woodius. Something is floating toward the dock. A small boat, carved from dark timber and lined with woolen furs, bumps gently against the pier. No one rows, no one speaks, but inside is a lantern, still burning. Warm amber light sways within, inviting you or daring you to step in. You do, because of course you do. The boat glides, without effort, guided not by oar, but by story. You pass islands that seem to blink, cliffs shaped like frozen faces, mid-shout, and waterfalls that vanish into mist before they hit the sea, somewhere behind. A horn sounds low, ancient, and haunting. It could mean arrival. It could mean goodbye. You remember something a guide once muttered while pouring honey on toast. The Norse believed that everything breathes, even the ocean. You think about that as a sudden gust ripples. The water's surface like a side dot, as the shore changes shape and fades behind mist. The light in the lantern flickers, revealing carved figures in the wood beside you. They're faint, nearly worn, smooth by age. A hammer, a serpent, and a woman with no face but far too many arms. You decide not to think about that last one too hard. Eventually, the boat noses against another shore. This one steams with warmth from underground springs and the scent of birch smoke. You step out, half expecting to meet a welcoming party with spears. But instead, there's only one figure. An old man, wrapped in sealskin, stands by a fire made of driftwood and pine. He says nothing, only nods and points up the hill behind him. You follow, because clearly, this is the kind of dream where you follow the mysterious Viking grandpa. The path is narrow, lined with runestones crusted in moss. Some are shaped like swords, others like ship prows stuck upright in the dirt. You pass a small cairn of bones goat, probably, and a carved fox whose eyes look a little too real in the torchlight. It smells of damp stone and roasted roots. Your stomach growls, and you wonder if dream food counts toward your calorie limit. As you crest the hill, the world opens. A fjord spreads wide below, sparkling like iron under starlight. And above it all, The aurora begins ribbons of saffron gold and camjaggy green waltzing across the black sky like gods showing off. Beside you, a soft cough. You turn. The sealskin man has followed you silently, which is only mildly terrifying. He gestures toward the sky and finally speaks. They say the light's a bifrost, a bridge to the gods. He says, voice rough as gravel. Or maybe it's just the sky remembering how to dance. You nod like that makes sense. Maybe it does. A nearby stone has been carved into a seat, and you sink into it, feeling the cold slowly give way to body heat and quiet. There's no need to talk, not now. You're wrapped in wool and silence and stars. Historical fact. The Norse believed the aurora was connected to the gods, either a burning rainbow, bridge, or the armor of Valkyries riding into battle. And marginal fact, some Viking Age people believed that whistling at the northern lights would summon spirits. You resist the urge, just in case. Scholars still debate whether these stories were widespread beliefs or just regional tales passed along like lullabies. Either way, they stuck. Tonight, you're not here for conclusions. You're here for myths and the scent of pine smoke on your clothes. As the fire crackles and the aurora hums above, you begin to feel it, that slow, warm heaviness that precedes dreams. It wraps around your ribs like a wool blanket soaked in memory. You let your eyes close just for a moment, and in the distance, a war drum pulses once, then fades like a heartbeat under snow. You wake to warmth, not sunlight, but the deep golden glow of firelight licking the round beams of a timber ceiling. You're inside now, a longhouse, the kind you've only seen in history books and bad movies with suspiciously clean Vikings. This one feels real, lived in, smoked in. The air smells like pine pitch, sweat, roast meat, and something a little tangy maybe, fermented berries, or the distant promise of indigestion. A low murmur drifts through the hall, voices overlapping in soft conversation, the occasional clink of wooden cups, the scratch of a dog paw on packed earth. You sit up on a wool-stuffed bench tucked against the wall, wrapped in a bearskin that still smells faintly of actual bear. Across the hall, a hearth blazes with orange light. It's not just heat, it's heartbeat. Everything in the room flickers with it. Shadows on the rafters, metal buckles, and the deep bronze shine of a woman's braid as she stoops to stir something thick and bubbling in a pot. Someone notices you. A man with a scar like lightning splitting. His jaw lifts his horn cup toward you in greeting, then says something you don't understand but that feels like glad you're not dead. You nod back. He grins. It's a good start. To your left, a group gathers around a man with too many teeth and not enough beard, who is halfway through a story. His arms flail. His voice rises. Laughter roars like surf on stone. The story, you gather, involves a drunken goat, 3 arrows, and an angry sea witch. You wish you'd caught the beginning. Beside you, a boy no older than 10 carves shapes into a plank of wood. Triangles, crosses, swirls that might be wolves, or waves, or worms. He hums softly something repetitive, like a lullaby taught at the end of the world's historical fact. Longhouses were the heart of Viking domestic life, housing entire families, servants, livestock, and stories all under one roof. Marginal fact. Some longhouses included small niches built into the walls, believed to house guardian spirits or the ghosts of honored ancestors. The woman with the braid ladles a thick broth into a horn bowl and sets it in your hands. It smells like root vegetables, bone marrow, and patience. You thank her. She nods once, says, "Eat before the meeting, lest you want to forget your own name by midnight." Good advice. As the night deepens, so does the soundscape. A lyre strums from a corner. Rhythmic. The sound builds like mist. A tale of gods and wolves, of ships made from fingernails. You decide not to ask. And of a world tree that holds it all up with roots like braided iron. You sip mead, sweetened with honey and herbs. It goes straight to your shoulders, loosening muscles you didn't know were tight. And then, just as your bones begin to melt into the bench, the storyteller changes. A woman steps forward. She wears a tunic dyed in deep keston, with threadwork that catches the firelight in patterns of ravens and waves. Her voice is smooth, not loud, not soft, just inevitable. Everyone listens. She speaks the old names. Someone whispers beside you. Even the gods lean in. Her story is slower, colder. It speaks of Niflheim, the realm of frost and fog. Of a giant who drank the milk of an ancient cow that licked ice into shape until it became the first god. You try to follow but the mead, the fire, the voice. They pull you under like a warm sea. Somewhere in the tale, someone hands you a flat piece of stone etched with shallow grooves. You trace the shapes absently, runes. Your fingers follow the curves, and you realize you're holding not just words, but weathered memories. A child's prayer, a wish for safe passage, or a warning left too late. Scholars still debate how widely the Norse used runes for magic versus mundane record keeping. Some say it was all practical births, trades, deaths. Others whisper of rune spells carved into bones and buried beneath doorways to keep the dead from knocking twice. Your head nods. Forward. You catch yourself. Around you, the fire burns lower but steadier. The laughter has settled into murmurs, and even the storyteller now sits quietly, eyes closed. Mouth curved into a smile like she's just remembered something bittersweet. The boy carving beside you finishes his piece and hands it to you. It's Rafa, small round shield with a snake coiled on its surface. For protection, he says, eyes wide with the kind of seriousness only children and old gods carry. You thank him with a smile, then tuck it into your belt like you know what you're doing. Someone begins to sing. No words, just a tone that wraps around the room like the aurora did the sky, soft, spiraling. You lean back, eyes half closed, the rhythm of the song matching the beat of your heart. One of the dogs curls against your legs. Its fur is thick and smells faintly of wood smoke and wet grass. You don't mind, it breathes slowly and soon. So, do you? The longhouse flickers in and out of clarity. One moment it's walls and people and stories. The next, it's stars and wind and snow you can't quite feel. Somewhere between breath and dream, you wonder if the gods are watching all. If they're just old memories warming their hands by the same fire. You're walking now. The longhouse is behind you, its flickering light dimmed to an ember against the vast Norse sky. The night is crisp, edged with frost, and smells like birch bark and distant smoke. Your boots crunch over brittle moss and the occasional pine cone, the ground sloping gently down into a forest that breathes steam into the cold air like something alive, or like something watching. A raven calls above. Just one. You glance up. It circles, then vanishes behind a low cloud shaped suspiciously like an old man's beard. You keep walking. Something tells you this is the kind of night where answers wear cloaks and questions leave tracks. Before long, you come to the edge of a frozen lake, its surface smoothed by wind and time. glinting like polished silver under a moonfat with stories. There, on the opposite bank, stands a figure, tall, cloaked in kamjegi-dyed wool, holding a staff topped with antlers. It doesn't wave, it doesn't move, it just waits. So naturally, you do the least sensible thing and cross. The ice dot your footsteps creak. The wind whistles softly through fir branches like someone tuning an old lyre. Halfway across, you hear a cracking sound, not the ice you hope, but laughter. Light, sharp, layered with meanings you might never untangle. You reach the other side without falling in, so either the gods are merciful or they're bored. The figure nods. Their face is shadowed beneath a deep hood, but their voice is clear. You're late, you apologize. They shrug. It's customary. They continue to speak to the land before asking anything of it. They gesture to a circle of standing stones half buried in snow, their surfaces etched with frost and runes that shimmer faintly as if lit from within. You place a hand on one cold, rough, humming and whisper, the first thing that comes to mind. It's your name. The stone answers with silence. Then, a low tone, not quite heard but felt in your ribs. The others join in, harmonizing like old bones remembering their favorite song. Historical fact. The Vikings believed in Landvetter spirits of the land, often honored at sacred sites to ensure good harvests, fair weather, or victory in battle. Marginal fact. Some burial mounds were anchored with iron tools or stone circles to prevent the dead from wandering to Farby, 'cause even in death, Viking spirits could be ... ambitious. The cloaked figure gestures you forward through a grove where snow glows faintly blue beneath the moonlight. Your breath curls around your head like a question mark. Ahead, nestled in a dip between two hills, is a low structure-part house, part shrine, part memory. Inside, it's dim and warm. You kneel at the threshold as the figure murmurs something in Old Norse. The door creaks open, revealing shelves, lined with carved animal bones, amber beads, and bundles of herbs. A fire burns low in a stone circle, its smoke tracing runes in the air. This is the house of dreams, they whisper, and of those who walk both ways. You don't ask what that means. You're getting the hang of this now. On a small wooden platform rests a bundle of cloth. As the figure lifts it, a tiny animal skull tumbles out, maybe a fox, maybe something rarer. They cradle it like a newborn. Seer, they say, not just sorcery. They explain, because now you are asking. Seer isn't simply about casting spells. It's about tugging on the threads of fate, weaving paths through possibility. Some claim it's feminine magic, passed from the goddess Freya herself. Others insist Odin stole it and wore it like a borrowed cloak. Scholars still debate whether seer practitioners were revered, feared, or quietly avoided at parties. You're handed a splod, smooth, carved with tiny wolf's and asked to spin it once. You do. The world does not immediately unravel. Good sign, the figure chuckles. Not bad, but the trick is knowing which thread to pull. Behind you, the wind stirs. You turn. In the smoke, you see flickers. A ship at sea. A sword buried in earth. A woman standing on a hill shouting into a storm. Then it's gone. You blink. Hard visions, the figure says. Or memories, or maybe just smoke. This place doesn't like to choose. They reach into a pouch and hand you something heavy, a chunk of amber, warm to the touch, with what looks like a tiny insect trapped inside. A gift, they say, or a warning, depends on how you hold it. You step back outside. The wind has changed, softer, sadder, like a lullaby sung to the sea. The raven returns, perches atop a stone. It watches you. You nod. It doesn't nod back, rude. Then something peculiar happens. The trees lean in, just slightly, and you feel, in that slow, deep way that doesn't need proof, that the forest knows your name now. Not the one you said to the stone, but the one that hums in your bones when you're quiet. The cloaked figure raises their staff. You'll need that name before the end. They say. You start to ask what they mean, but they're already walking away, the antlers on their staff casting long shadows over the snow. You're alone now. The forest waits. You stand for a moment, not moving, not even thinking, just listening. The snow muffles everything but your breath and the soft, rhythmic creak of trees shifting in the cold. Somewhere an owl hoots, low and deliberate, as if it's offering commentary on your life choices. You take it as encouragement or sarcasm. Hard to tell with owls. The path forward isn't marked, but your feet know where to go. You follow the forest's curve, the moonlight casting elongated shadows that slither like old tails across the ground. Soon the trees thin, and a new sound reaches you, rhythmic thuds, sharp grunts, metal on wood. You come to a clearing ringed by torches and thick with the smell of sweat and pine sap. Here, the warriors train. Their bodies move with purpose, grace sharpened into discipline. Two fighters circle each other in the center of the ring, bare-chested despite the cold, muscles gleaming with effort. One wields a round shield and short axe, the other a spear. Every blow is precise. Every dodge is timed to the breath. You stay back, silent. Then a voice beside you, deep and amused. You thinking of joining in. You glance over. A broad-shouldered woman in a Keston-colored tunic watches the sparring with arms folded. A sword strapped across her back. Her braids are wound with leather cords and beads that clack softly when she shifts her weight. You shake your head. She smirks. Smart. She nods toward the ring. We train for battle, yes, but also for memory, for song. Every bruise is a verse. Every scar, a stanza. You raise an eyebrow. She grins. What? You thought all our stories came from quiet? Old men with ink-stained fingers. The match ends. The fighters clasp forearms, no cheering, just the silent nod of mutual respect. Another pair steps up. The ritual continues. Historical fact: Viking warriors trained rigorously, not just for war, but for public competitions known as holmgangsduels that could settle disputes, defend honor, or prove one's strength before a crowd. Marginal fact: some Viking warriors carried luck stones or tiny carved idols into battle, not for divine favor, but to remind themselves of home, a talisman of memory, not mercy. The woman leads you to a bench carved from old driftwood. You sit, watching as a young boy struggles to lift a training shield nearly his size. He wants to be a skald, she says, but he doesn't know yet that telling battles and surviving them are different skills. You ask her name. Ira, she replies. It means mercy. Strange, isn't it? She doesn't smile this time. The torchlight flickers, casting orange and gold over the training ground, the flame light catching on glistening skin, flashing blades, and the steam rising from hot bodies in cold air. A warrior limps past, nose bloodied but grinning. Another sharpens a blade against a whetstone, the rasp rhythmic, like breathing. EIRA motions you toward a rack of weapons. You hesitate. It doesn't bite, she says, then adds, well, some of them don't. You run your fingers over sword hilts wrapped in worn leather, a few warm to the touch as if remembering the hands that held them. One axe bears a faint carving a bird, mid-flight wings stretched wide. You ask about it. Ah, Ira says. That one S called Vind means windhood, belonged to a berserker who claimed it let him speak to storms. You decide not to pick it up. She lifts a practice sword and hands it to you. Just hold it. Feel the weight. Then you'll understand something. You do. It's heavier than expected. Not just in mass, but in meaning. You realize a weapon isn't just forged metal. It's a decision carried in your hand. And that decision echoes long after it's made. Scholars still debate the psychological role of weapons in Norse culture, whether they were seen purely as tools or also as extensions of fate, identity, and honor. Some argue a sword could carry a name longer than the warrior who wielded it. The fight ring clears. A horn sounds once low, mournful, steady. Training ends. The warriors scatter, some returning to the longhouse, others heading into the woods. A few simply collapsing onto benches, with sighs of exhaustion and satisfaction. Ira watches them go. Tomorrow we hunt, she says. Not deer, not men, something older. You open your mouth to ask, but she's already walking into the trees, the torchlight fading behind her. The beads in her braid click faintly, like the ticking of a clock. You stand alone again. The sword is still in your hand. You place it gently back on the rack. Above you, clouds shift, revealing stars in vast constellations, some familiar, others strange. One cluster seems to form a ship, another a woman's face, another a serpent coiled around a circle. The forest exhales. You follow the starlit path down from the training ground, your breath rising in little silver ghosts. You pass a pile of snow-dusted shields resting in a circle. One bears a design you've seen before, etched on a stone, whispered in a dream, half remembered in a riddle. You touch it, it's cold, then warm, then gone. You shake your head and keep walking, the path bending gently back toward the village, but slower now, and with the deep ache of something learned but not yet understood. And behind you, the torch near the weapon rack flares once, casting a flicker of flame into the still, waiting dark. Dawn comes not as a golden fanfare, but as a slow, silver seepage across the sky clouds, blushed with soft camjaggy and the faintest trace of hope. You wake to the smell of something warm, baked grains and smoke, with just a hint of dried juniper. The longhouse is quiet now, filled with the deep breaths of sleeping bodies and the occasional creak of shifting timber. But outside, the village has already begun to stir. A low hum of activity meets your ears as you step into the frosted morning. Snow crunches underfoot, and a pair of ravens chatter from the ridgepole above. One of them eyes you with what could only be described as smug curiosity. You're not sure if that's better or worse than judgment. The villagers prepare for departure today. They hunt, but not for game. Their movements are purposeful, more ritual than routine. Spears are inspected, arrows bundled. A woman with streaks of white in her braids anoints foreheads with soot and ash. One man knots an iron pendant around his neck, murmuring a name you can't catch, his voice low and trembling. The forest looms ahead. Ira is there, already mounted on a shaggy grey horse, dressed in layered leathers, dyed in shadowy lace. Her eyes flick to you. You came, she says, not quite a question. You nod. She tosses you a woolen cloak. Good, it sees movement. You don't ask what it is. Not yet. Historical fact. Viking hunters often ventured deep into untamed wilderness, not only for food or fur, but to protect their communities from wolves, bears, or according to some legends wilder things that walked the snow when no one was looking. Marginal fact, some Norse villagers believed in creatures called drogaressless, undead warriors who guarded buried treasure or exacted revenge, requiring both steel and cunning to defeat. You ride. The group moves as one. 15 riders, 2 sleds pulled by snarling dogs, and an old man muttering runes under his breath as he sprinkles dried herbs onto the snow. The wind cuts through your clothes like a memory you thought you'd forgotten. The deeper you go, the quieter it gets. Snow hangs thick on the trees here, bending branches like sleeping giants. Somewhere in the distance, something crunches, but nothing moves. Even the ravens have fallen silent. The tension doesn't scream. It hums deep in your bones, like the memory of a storm before it hits. Eira calls a halt. She points. You look. At first you see nothing. Then you notice the trees. They've bent in unnatural directions, bark scorched black in curling spirals, as though something hot passed through. No fire burns here. No footprints. But there's a smell, ozone, earth, and something older like iron left too long in blood. The old man, the rune reader, steps forward. He lays his hand against the twisted bark, murmurs, then turns to the group. It crossed here at Moonhigh. Still hungry. No one asks what. You begin to suspect everyone already knows. Ira speaks low to a young boy, no older than 13. He nods solemnly, adjusts the axe strapped across his back, and ties a red thread around his wrist. You wonder how many times he's done this before. Scholars still debate the role of ritual, bravery among young Norse men, whether it was encouraged as a rite of passage or demanded as social currency, regardless of the psychological cost. You press onward. The trees thin once more, revealing a half-frozen lake. The group dismounts. Silently, they form a circle on the snow, every spear facing outward. You stand beside Ira. She lifts her arm and then, nothing, silence, then a crack. It comes from beneath the ice, another crack close, then a growl that doesn't belong in any forest you've ever known. Something dark coils beneath the ice like smoke in water, moving too fast, too large. The lake groans. The rune reader raises a torch. Suddenly, the ice shatters. A shape erupts huge, wrong, slick with shadows, and screaming like wind through broken teeth. Arrows fly. One hits. It howls. The sound pierces your bones like frostbite. Ira charges, sword drawn, the boy just behind her. You stumble backward, your breath caught somewhere between awe and terror. A spear lands at your feet. You pick it up, not because you know how to use it, but because not doing so feels worse. The creature lashes out tall as a pine, bones like antlers, eyes like wet coals. It grabs a man by the waist. He disappears, just gone. You throw the spear, it misses, but it distracts. That's enough. Eira slashes across its flank. The boy swings, his axe at its leg. The creature reels. More arrows, more blood, if you can call the thick blue-black ooze. Blood. Then finally, the rune reader steps forward, muttering faster now, voice rising over the wind. He throws a pouch of something bright silver dust. Maybe into the air. The creature shrieks. and vanishes, not falls, not dies, just ceases to be. The silence returns, heavy and immediate, like an anvil dropped into snow. Everyone stands still, then a slow breath, then movement again. They gather what remains, one broken spear, a patch of blood-flecked snow, and the boy's red thread, now dangling loose from his wrist. No one speaks. You walk back toward the trees. Eira doesn't look at you, but her hand finds yours for a moment. She squeezes once, firmly, then lets go, and the forest closes behind you like a curtain. At the end of a play too old to be remembered. You return to the village in silence, your boots heavy with melted snow and the kind of exhaustion that doesn't live in your muscles. It lives somewhere deeper, somewhere just behind your ribs. No one sings, no one boasts. The sleds are lighter now. One is completely empty. You don't ask which name is missing. Smoke curls gently from longhouse chimneys, smelling of peat and pine and meat simmered low and slow. You hear laughter from somewhere light, soft, a child perhaps, unaware of what hunted just beyond the tree line. For a brief moment, that innocence warms you more than the fire waiting ahead. Inside the longhouse, bodies gather, not packed, but close. Close enough to share stories, share heat, share the weight of what they all choose to carry and what they choose to leave unsaid. Cloaks hang from carved wooden hooks. A carved walrus tusk comb rests near the fire, abandoned mid-stroke. Ira tosses her damp leather cloak beside it and kneels near the hearth. You look worse than a troll with a hangover, she mutters without turning. You take that as a compliment. She smiles barely, but it's there. She tosses you a bowl of stew. You catch it with the reflexes of someone who's had worse landings in their dreams. It smells of barley, dried fish, and something wild, juniper, or maybe sorrow. You're not sure. You eat anyway. And around you, the stories begin. Historical fact: in Viking society, storytelling, especially in the form of skaldic poetry, was a cornerstone of cultural life, often used to preserve history, entertain, and even legally record family lineages or land claims. Tonight, though, the stories are for neither gold nor caught there for memory. Marginal fact: some sagas included deliberate exaggerations or fantastical elements to protect the speaker from political fallout. As if to say, it didn't happen, but imagine if it did. The first tale is about a ship that returned without its crew but with all its cargo intact. The second, of a woman who spoke to the dead and found them better company than the living. Then a child speaks up, yes. A child with a tale about a bear that wore a crown of roots and whispered riddles to any who dared hunt it. Everyone listens. No one laughs. Not because they believe it, but because they know the need to believe in something bigger. Stranger, kinder. Your gaze drifts on the far wall. The shadows move in ways the fire doesn't command. They flicker against carved shields and painted panels that stretch across the room's heartwood beams. Each image tells a piece of a longer story: gods in disguise, men turning into wolves, a serpent so long it circled the world and bit its own tail out of spite, or maybe just curiosity. You hear the word Ragnarok murmured in the back of the room, not shouted, not explained, just spoken, as if to remind you that even stories must someday end. Scholars still debate whether the Norse actually believed in Ragnarok as a literal prophecy, or if it served a poetic function, an existential exhale in mythic form, acknowledging that even the mightiest order contains the seed of its own undoing. The hearth fire, dims.eira stands. She walks to the center of the room and unhooks a small iron pendant from around her neck. She holds it up not high, just enough for the firelight to catch the runes etched into its surface. You recognize one. It's the symbol she traced in the air before today's hunt. It's said this belonged to a skald who never forgot a single word he heard. She begins, because he didn't hear them with his ears, but with his scars. Everyone listens. Even the baby in the corner stops fussing. She turns the pendant over once, then tosses it gently into the fire. It doesn't hiss or pop, it simply disappears in a soft orange bloom. "Let that be our final word for the night," she says. And just like that, the evening is done. No applause, no bows, just the soft shifting of blankets, the murmur of gratitude, and the slow stretch of sleep pressing its gentle hands over the room like a tide reclaiming the shore. You lie back, watching the fire fade into coals that glow like distant stars. One by one, voices fall silent. Even the crackling wood seems to grow shy. The longhouse settles into a deep, shared exhale. Then a whisper, low and meant only for you. "You did well today." You turn. Ira's eyes are already closed, and the pendant, it's still in the fire, but something in you knows you'll see it again. Maybe not as metal, maybe as story. You close your eyes, and for the first time since stepping into this frost-bitten dream, you truly feel like part of it. The longhouse breathes with you, and above, beyond the thick timber roof, the stars wheel slowly and unconcerned, unread, but always watching. You dream of wolves, not the snarling kind that lunge for your throat, but slow, silent shapes moving through knee-deep snow, their breath fogging the air like prayers without words. You wake with their echo in your chest, like something unfinished. Outside, dawn hasn't broken yet. The longhouse is a landscape of sleeping bodies and fading embers. You slip past the others, careful not to disturb the snorer, who, based on volume alone, must have been a berserker in a past life. The cold greets you like an old friend with bad manners. Frost coats the wooden railing outside the door. The village lies hushed, powdered in snow, its rooftops like slumbering beasts. You follow a narrow path past the well and toward the sea. And there it is, the shoreline. Frozen waves ripple. Mid-motion, locked by wind and tide. Boats rest on the shore like bones of leviathans. Long ships pulled above the tide line, their dragon-head prows turned toward the wind. You hear it before you see it, a low chant. You follow the sound toward a ring of stones at the water's edge, where a gathering of villagers stands in a wide circle, foes pulled tight, heads bowed, steam rising from mouths like ghostly offerings. At the center, a fire and a body, wrapped in linen, adorned with tokens, iron rings, polished bone runes, painted in blood-red pigment on her forehead. You recognize her, the rune reader's wife, the one who fed you honeyed root before the hunt. This is her fjords, a farewell.eira stands at the edge. Her eyes unreadable, historical fact. Norse funerary customs varied widely, from cremation and burial to elaborate ship burials, performed at sea, others on land, meant to carry the dead into the afterlife known as Valhalla, Folkvanga, or the shadowy Helheim, depending on how they lived and died. A child steps forward and lays a painted stone at the body's feet. You notice, everyone carries something small, an offering or memory. Marginal fact, in certain northern settlements, coins were not always placed on the eyes, but sewn into clothing or hidden in boots to bribe the spirits guarding the gate between worlds. The chanting rises. Not mournful, not joyous. Something in between, like the wind arguing with the waves. Then, fire, not the crackling campfire kind. This is ceremonial. The flames touch the linen, a hiss, then a bloom. The scent of juniper and elderflower fills your nostrils, mingling with the sting of smoke and something else. Something metallic. Ancient. The villagers don't look away. Neither do you, because this isn't an ending. It's a reminder that memory is action, that remembrance is rebellion against forgetting. Ira reaches into her coat and produces a small carved figure of, almost childlike. She whispers something too soft to hear, then drops it into the fire. And just like that, the wind shifts. Sea spray mists your face, sharp and clean. The flames dim. Only embers remain. The villagers break the circle and move quietly back toward the village. Some touch the stones as they pass. An old custom, maybe, or just habit. You follow last. Ira stays behind, so you do. Top. She watches the embers with an expression that could mean 1,000 things or nothing at all. Finally, she speaks. Once we burn ships for the dead, she says, eyes still on the coals. Now we burn the dead to keep the ships. You nod, unsure if that's wisdom or warning. Probably both. You walk back together without speaking. Scholars still debate whether Norse funerals were more symbolic or practical, fire as purification, or merely convenience in cold, stone-laden lands where the earth was too frozen to dig. Back in the village, a group gathers near the central longhouse. A new ritual, it seems. Not for the dead, for the living. You see warriors sharpening blades, not for war, but for the thing, a kind of open-air court where disputes are settled, alliances tested, and grudges aired like laundry on a windy day. You hear snippets. His goats crossed the border. She insulted the honor of the hammer was mine. Even in a place like this, drama thrives. You sit beside an old man who feeds you roasted oats and points with his spoon toward a red-faced woman waving a hunting spear. That's his cousin, or his wife, or both, he mutters. Hard to keep track when everyone's named after the same for gods. You nearly choke on your oats. The thing begins. A circle is formed, and one by one, disputes are laid out. Not with swords, but with words sharpened to nearly gold precision. It's messy, it's honest, it's democracy. Maybe not quite, but close. Historical fact. The Norse Thing system was one of the earliest forms of proto-democracy in Europe, where free men gathered to settle disputes, create laws, and elect chieftains, or kings, often by consensus or show of support rather than bloodshed. The red-faced woman wins her case. The goats are sentenced to symbolic exile, a poetic punishment involving flower garlands and public embarrassment. The village roars with laughter. You laugh too, because in this frozen world of gods and beasts and whispered fires, there's still room for joy and weird goat trials, and that might be the most human thing you've seen all day. You awaken to the distant howl of a revener. Sentinels cry, cutting through the cold dawn air as frost clings to every blade of grass like tiny shards of glass. The village is still wrapped in silence, save for the soft creak of wooden beams settling under the weight of night. You wrap your cloak tighter, feeling the rough wool bite gently at your neck, and step outside where the sky is painted in pale camjagi and muted saffron surisk streaks heralding a reluctant sunrise. The air smells, sharp of wood smoke, wet earth, and pine resonant somewhere close. The low murmur of the smith's hammer begins its rhythmic beat, echoing like the heartbeat of this frozen land. You follow the sound to the forge, where a burly blacksmith with arms like twisted oak strikes molten iron with fierce concentration. Sparks fly with each blow, small cavilcumler twinkling like captive stars against the dusky morning light. Around him, apprentices watch silently, faces streaked with soot and resolved at historical fact. Blacksmithing in Viking culture was not only a vital craft, but deeply symbolic. Associated with the god Thor's hammer, Mjolnir, and believed to possess magical properties that protected both warriors and their homes. Quiet debate ripples nearby among villagers discussing whether the forging of weapons carries more honor than the battle itself, a question scholars still ponder, reflecting on the balance between creation and destruction in Norse tradition. Suddenly, a child runs into the forge, clutching a carved wooden figure, intricate representation of a Valkyrie. The blacksmith pauses, wiping sweat from his brow, and nods solemnly before adding a final tempering blow to his glowing blade, as if infusing it with unseen power. Outside, the frost begins to melt under the hesitant sun, droplets forming on icy branches and shimmering like liquid gems. You notice the interplay of Kamjagi shadows and saffron sarisk light, casting long, soft silhouettes that dance quietly against the village walls. The atmosphere feels charged yet peaceful, a fragile truce between night and day, war and home. Nearby, an elder woman tends to a fire pit, stirring a pot of thick stew scented with wild herbs and dried fish, her weathered hands steady and sure despite the cold. You catch the faint aroma of rosemary and juniper mingling with the smoke, grounding you deeper into this ancient world. Marginal fact: some Viking communities brewed potent herbal concoctions believed to ease wounds and invite protective spirits, blending practical medicine with superstition in ways still fascinating to modern historians. As you watch, a raven circles overhead, its black wings stark against the softly lit sky, embodying both the omen and the messenger between worlds. You pause to breathe deeply, the crisp air filling your lungs with a cold fire that sparks awakening and resolve. And as the village stirs to life beneath the watchful eyes of gods and men, you realize that every dawn here is a small battle won not with sword or shield, but with patience, skill, and the quiet strength to face whatever comes next. The mid-morning sun climbs higher, filtering through the skeletal branches of towering firs that surround your small longhouse, casting dappled shadows in shades of deep keston and muted lacevet. The air hums softly with the distant clang of axes and the rhythmic thud of logs splitting as the village prepares for winter's tightening grip. You find yourself drawn to the shoreline, where the grey-green waves lap against jagged rocks, and fishermen clad in saffron sarisk tunics haul nets heavy with silver-scaled herring, their breath rising in misty clouds that mingle with the faint smell of seaweed and brine. Nearby, an old mariner leans on his weather-beaten or eyes fixed on the horizon as he recounts tales of sea serpents and storm gods to a cluster of children. His voice is rough but steady, weaving myth and memory into a seamless tapestry that hangs in the salty air. The scent of pine tar and burning driftwood drifts from a nearby bonfire, where villagers tend to their boats, patching sails with care born from generations of survival. Historical fact: Viking longships, crafted with intricate knowledge of the sea and wind, were marvels of engineering that allowed Norse explorers to traverse vast distances from icy, Arctic fjords to the temperate shores of the Mediterranean. Yet scholars still debate the extent to which Viking voyages were driven by conquest versus exploration, a question that colors every saga and stone carved in their honor. Suddenly, a seagull's harsh cry pierces the calm, sending a flock of black birds scattering against the pale Kamji-Begi sky, while faint wisps of smoke curl from the village hearths, mingling with the salty breeze. You watch as a young woman in a flowing cloak dyed in deep lacework carefully binds bundles of dried herb sage, rosemary, and thyme, her hands deft and sure, a subtle ritual against illness and misfortune. Marginal fact: Norse women were often skilled healers and seers, weaving herbal lore with spiritual insight, their knowledge preserved in secret manuscripts and oral tradition alike. As the afternoon light softens, the shoreline transforms into a shimmering ribbon of gold and shadow, and you sense the steady pulse of life, hard, resilient, yet rich with stories whispered by wind and wave. You take a final breath of the briny air, the sharp taste of salt and pine grounding you before you turn back to the warmth and smoke of the village hearth. The evening sky deepens into a rich Kamji-Begi as flickering oil lamps cast long, wavering shadows across the wooden walls of the great hall, where villagers gather beneath heavy beams carved with ancient runes. The air hums with low murmurs, and the scent of roasted venison mingles with the sharp tints of spilled mead. You sit among the crowd, feeling the rough texture of your Keston-colored cloak as a skald steps forward, his voice rising and falling in the lilting cadence of Old Norse poetry, recounting tales of gods and heroes, of thunderous battles and cunning tricksters who shaped the fate of worlds. The hall is alive with anticipation, faces illuminated by the fire's glow, eyes reflecting stories passed down through generations, each word a thread in the tapestry of Viking lore. Children clutch wooden carvings of dragons and wolves, while elders nod knowingly, their gazes fixed on the skalds. Every gesture, the crackle of burning wood and the faint swirl of smoke blend with the skald's voice, weaving an atmosphere thick with reverence and the restless energy of remembered legends. Historical fact: skalds were more than entertainers. They were the keepers of history and lore, their poems preserving the collective memory and values of Norse society. Scholars still debate how much these oral traditions were altered over time, questioning the balance between myth and fact in the stories that have come down to us. A sudden gust from a half-open door sends sparks from the hearth swirling like tiny stars against the darkened beams, while outside the cold wind hums a mournful tune through the branches. You catch sight of a warrior in a deep lacework cloak, his face shadowed, quietly sharpening his axe, silent reminder of the ever-present tension between peace and conflict. Marginal fact: some skaldic verses were composed to honor fallen warriors, believed to grant them immortality through song, a fate perhaps more enduring than bronze or stone. As the night deepens, the hall's warmth and stories cocoon you, a fragile bastion against the encroaching darkness beyond the village walls. The chill of dawn seeps through the thick stone walls of the longhouse as you awaken to muted sounds of hammer on metal and the clatter of wooden shields being prepared for battle. Outside, frost glistens like crushed glass on the earth, and the sky hangs heavy in shades of deep Keston and pale saffron ceresque, promising a harsh day ahead. You rise, pulling your Kamji-Begi cloak tighter, joining a small group of warriors, sharpening blades and murmuring prayers to Odin and Thor, their breath visible in the crisp air as they ready for the unknown conflicts that lie beyond the horizon. The weight of anticipation presses down, each man and woman wrapped in the solemn ritual of preparation. The flickering firelight casting long shadows that dance like restless spirits along the timber walls. Nearby, a blacksmith hammers tirelessly, sparks flying, his brow slick with sweat despite the cold, the rhythmic clang of metal on anvil a heartbeat echoing through the hall. You hear whispered boasts of valor and unspoken fears beneath the stoic exteriors, the unyielding bond of comradeship as vital as the steel they wield. Historical fact: Viking warriors often conducted rituals before battle, invoking protection from the gods and seeking courage through symbolic acts. Scholars still debate the extent to which Viking warfare was ritualized versus spontaneous aggression, leaving gaps in our understanding of their combat culture. A raven's distant call breaks the tense silence. A bird sacred to Odin, its cry carrying a message both ominous and hopeful. Outside, the first snowflakes begin to fall, dusting the earth in cold white, softening the harsh lines of the landscape. A warrior clad in lace avert steps forward, his face stern beneath a helmet etched with intricate patterns, embodying the quiet strength that defines the Viking spirit. Marginal fact: some Viking helmets were adorned with animal motifs, believed to channel the power and ferocity of the creatures they depicted. A blend of art and superstition. You grasp your weapon, the cold metal grounding you as the clan gathers, ready to face whatever fate the gods decree. The longhouse now silent. You wander toward the edge of the village, where a small crowd gathers beneath towering pines dusted with fresh snow, their needles shimmering in muted Kamjabegi and Keston tones under a cold, grey sky. The air hangs, heavy with the scent of burning pine, resin, and earth, while the distant roar of waves crashing against rocky shores reminds you of the fierce, untamed world beyond. In the center, a wise woman, dressed in flowing saffron sarisk robes, chants softly, her breath forming small clouds as she moves rhythmically around a fire pit, the flames flickering orange and gold against the gathering dusk. Her voice weaves ancient tales of gods and giants, of frost and fire, and the endless battle for balance in the cosmos. The crowd's faces a mixture of reverence and awe, eyes reflecting the dancing flames as shadows play across weathered skin and braided hair. Nearby, a young boy clutches a carved wooden hammer, his gaze locked on the ritual as if glimpsing a secret only the old spirits know. You sense the tension between the sacred and the earthly, the weight of tradition held in every whispered incantation and flicker of flame dot. Historical fact: Seer, a form of Norse magic often practiced by women called Valvus, was believed to influence fate and the natural world, playing a vital role in Viking spirituality. Scholars still debate the exact practices and social status of practitioners like the Volva, as written sources were often biased or incomplete. A sudden gust sends sparks spiraling upward, small kvilkumla twinkling briefly before fading into the smoke, a sign of the god's fleeting presence in the mortal realm. The sky darkens further into a deep blue black, stars just beginning to pierce the twilight, while the hush of the forest grows, as if nature itself listens to the ancient song. Marginal fact: some Viking rituals involved burning symbolic effigies, or objects to send messages to the gods, blending sacrifice with storytelling. You step back, feeling the chill in your bones, but warmed by the fire's glow and the enduring pulse of myth and magic that threads through this world. The cold night deepens as you follow a narrow path winding through snow-laden pines. their branches heavy and silent beneath a sky awash with shimmering auroras, casting kamji-begi and saffron ceresque hues over the landscape. The frozen earth crunches beneath your boots as you approach a solitary Viking ship moored at the edge of a fjord. Its carved prow resembling a snarling beast poised to sail into the unknown. Around the vessel, warriors in deep lacevet and Keston cloaks prepare quietly, sharpening blades and securing leather straps. Their breath visible in the frosty air, faces set with determination and a hint of solemnity. The faint crackle of a small fire nearby struggles against the cold. Tiny Kavilkemler rising like ghosts before vanishing into the night, while the water laps softly against the wooden hull, reflecting stars and the ethereal dance above. A skald recites heroic sagas in low tones, the words weaving stories of past voyages and battles, binding the present to a legacy of courage and fate. The air is thick with anticipation, a blend of reverence and restless energy as the crew readies for a journey that might lead to glory or oblivion. Historical fact: Viking longships were masterpieces of naval engineering designed for speed, agility, and long voyages across the unpredictable northern seas. Scholars still debate the extent and impact of Viking exploration, questioning whether their journeys were driven more by conquest or trade and cultural exchange. Marginal fact: some ships were buried with their owners in elaborate funerary rites, believed to carry the dead to the afterlife with all their worldly possessions. You pause to absorb the scene. The fragile boundary between life and legend, feeling the cold bite of night, but also the warm pulse of human resolve beneath ancient stars. Dawn breaks with a pale saffron cerisque glow spilling over frost-covered hills as you find yourself among a quiet village, waking to the sounds of children and the steady hammering from the blacksmith's forge, where a burly craftsman in a kamjabegi tunic shapes glowing metal into weapons and tools. Smoke curls upward, mingling with the lingering mist, while villagers dressed in Keston and Lacevert gather near the wooden longhouse to share news and prepare for the day's toil. The air is crisp but holds a subtle warmth, hinting at the promise of spring, and the scent of pine and wet earth fills your lungs. An elder recounts tales of gods and heroes to a circle of eager listeners, their voices rising and falling like the rhythm of the sea, while young warriors polish their shields decorated with intricate knotwork, preparing for training under watchful eyes. The atmosphere is a blend of solemn tradition and everyday resilience, a reminder that even in times of hardship, community and stories endure. Historical fact: Viking society was organized into tight-knit clans, where loyalty and honor shaped daily life and decision-making. Scholars still debate the social roles of women in Viking culture, with some arguing they held significant influence contrary to popular belief. Marginal fact: some Viking jewelry was believed to hold protective magic, passed down through generations as heirlooms. You breathe deeply, absorbing the steady pulse of life, hear the intersection of myth, memory, and the mundane, and sense how the ancient world still whispers through these simple moments. Night falls like a velvet curtain as you settle beside a crackling fire on the shore of a fjord, the stars above sparkling against the deep kamjabegi sky, while distant waves lap softly at ancient stones worn smooth by time. The scent of pine, resin, and smoked fish lingers in the air as you listen to the low hum of a skald's song, weaving tales of Odin's wisdom and Thor's thunderous might, the melodies stirring a quiet awe within you. Cloaked figures in rich lacevert and Keston gather nearby, sharing mead and whispered legends beneath the flickering glow of torches, their faces carved by flickering shadows and a lifetime of hardship and hope. The firelight dances on carved wooden shields and worn leather boots, while a gentle breeze carries the faint rustle of raven wings overhead, reminding you of the ever-watchful presence of the gods. Here, in this moment, suspended between earth and sky, past and present, you feel the pulse of the Viking spirit, wild, enduring, and fiercely alive. Historical fact: the Vikings believed that valor in battle ensured passage to Valhalla, a warrior's paradise ruled by Odin. Scholars still debate the extent to which Norse mythology influenced Viking daily life versus being ceremonial storytelling. Marginal fact: some Viking rituals involve the use of runes, not only for magic, but also as mnemonic devices for oral history. You close your eyes. The warmth of the fire and the murmur of ancient songs soothing your thoughts as the night slowly deepens, carrying you toward restful dreams shaped by legends and whispered gods.